Hello everyone, and welcome to our project for SAS Global Forum 2020. This is our project on determining college student success. My name is Carl Palombaro.
Hello, everybody. My name is Catherine Floyd.
Hello, everyone. This is Kayla Barrier.
So why are we looking at student loan debt? Well, according to debt.org, the U.S. student debt is over $1.4 trillion with over $2,800 accruing every second, with the average student owing over $37,000. Since 1980, there has been a 241% increase in public school tuition and a 344% increase in private school tuition. Therefore, our goal for this project is to determine how much of an individual's salary it will take to repay their student loans based on what they majored in and which college they attended, and ultimately how they can become debt-free. We also want to have a look at the best university for each major based on the mean salary after graduation. The approach we took for this project was that of a student about to go off to college. The student either knows what department they want to study under, what school they want to attend, or that they just want a college degree. They then must choose a school, department, or both, depending on what they knew before. Once they've graduated, they will earn a salary based on their department and school. That salary is then used for their cost of living expenses and school loans. The money left over will be their disposable income. As you may have caught on from the previous slide, we have made some assumptions for this project to keep the scope reasonable. First, the student will be attending one of the public universities offered in North Carolina. Second, the student will have in-state status, and therefore we will not be handling out-of-state scenarios. Third, the student will be completing the full education at one school in 4 years. Therefore, we will not be looking at any transfer situations. Finally, once graduated, the student will be employed in North Carolina and will be using the standard repayment plan when repaying their loans. For those of you not familiar with the UNC school system, we have provided a graphic of the schools which have been considered in our project.
For our project, we were able to gather our data from NC Tower. NC Tower is a web-based delivery system providing aggregate information on students who attended public universities and community colleges in North Carolina. This data includes programs of studies, degrees attained, further enrollment, and wage and employment information. For our project, we used two datasets that provided the primary information regarding the employment, salary, and degrees attained. We cleaned them to only show bachelor's degrees, as that was the degree we were most concerned with. Rows with missing salary information were not considered in the analysis of salaries. A summary statistic of all public universities and all subject areas were not considered. We also included two new columns in the datasets. We added a campus abbreviation column and department column. The department column bends the 192 unique degrees into 9 departments. Here we show how we broke down the departments. In this project, the focus was solely on federal student loans in the 2017 school year. These include subsidized and unsubsidized loans with a 4.53% interest rate and Parent Plus loans with a 7.08% interest rate. Subsidized loans will not accrue interest while in school. However, unsubsidized and Parent Plus loans will. After graduation, subsidized loans will accrue interest continuously. The calculated repayment amounts are based on the standard loan repayment plan, which gives students a consistent monthly repayment amount that will repay the loan in 10 years, assuming all payments are made on time. When looking at loan datasets on the Federal Student Aid website, this dataset seemed most relevant to our project. It offers information regarding loans available and how many were actually disbursed, as well as how many students at North Carolina colleges received these loans. This information is offered for every campus as well as for each loan type we're focusing on: subsidized, unsubsidized, and Parent Plus loans. From this information, we were able to calculate the total loan amounts per university with interest and an estimated monthly repayment amount using the standard repayment plan for federal loans.
Next, we're going to have a look at what some of this data looks like. There are two major data sets we are focusing on: the employment data set and the salary data set. Both sets consist of data from 2006 to 2017. We will mainly be focusing on the reported mean wage and employed graduates from the employment data set, and the reported mean, median, 25th percentile, and 75th percentile wage from the salary data set. Here we take a look at the comparison of the tuition and fees of each of the schools. We can see that Elizabeth City has the lowest tuition, while the UNC School of the Arts has the highest tuition cost.
As mentioned earlier, we have 9 departments which our degrees are binned into. On the right, we can see the sum of the graduates from each department from the UNC school system in 2017. You can see that health sciences had the highest number of graduates from that year. And on the left, we have calculated the overall percentage of graduates from each department to give you a feel of how many students are within each department.
This scatter plot shows the average salaries after 1 year for each department at each school. Now let us introduce the cost of living to this graph. In North Carolina, the cost of living on average is about $25,000. So if we add a line at $25,000, the graph looks much more interesting. We will discuss this later on.
Using the loans dataset along with data containing in-state tuition for each school of interest, this report shows each school's 4-year tuition along with the breakdown of the average amounts of the 3 types of loans taken at each school. It also shows the average amount each student will take out over the course of 4 years. For a closer look at how much of a student's salary will go towards loan repayment, this report was created as well. This table displays each school's 4-year tuition, yearly loan repayment, the average salary for each department after graduation, and the percentage of their monthly salary that should be towards their monthly loan repayment.
Based on an analysis of what would be left over as disposable income, we can see that about 70% of applied science and engineering graduates would be able to afford their loan payments comfortably, whereas about 56% of fine arts, humanities, and social science graduates would not be able to afford their loan repayment plan within the traditional timeline. We are now going to explore the 3 cases mentioned earlier in the presentation. For each specific case, we will be making a couple of assumptions just for the sake of this presentation. For case 1, we are going to assume that the student knows he wants to study biology, which is within the natural sciences department. We will also assume that this student has the grades to be accepted into any of the UNC schools that they might choose. So the first thing he decides to do is look for which school has the highest average salary for their students graduating from the natural sciences department. After his inspection, he determines that the top choices are East Carolina University, NC State, and UNC Chapel Hill, all being in the low 40,000 range. He ultimately determines that he wants to attend UNC Chapel Hill, even though East Carolina technically has the higher mean salary. This student also looks at the trend of salaries from the top schools after 1 year and up to 10 years after graduation. In this case, we see that UNC Chapel Hill has the highest salary after 10 years in the workforce. Once the student has graduated and received a job with a salary in North Carolina, they must then consider the cost of living in North Carolina. The chart above shows the cost of living for a single individual with no children while living a very minimalistic lifestyle. We can see that this individual should plan to spend approximately $25,000 a year to live in North Carolina. The data for this graph comes from a living wage calculator created by MIT, which can be accessed from the source seen on the page. This graph uses the mean salary data from 2007 to 2018, student loan information, and the cost of living in North Carolina to calculate the amount of disposable income this student will generate in the coming years. As seen in the graph, the red bars indicate what the individual owes each year from loans and cost of living, while the blue bars indicate how much disposable income there will be at the end of each year. Assuming the student graduated at the age of 22, they will begin to have a disposable income by the age of 27.
The second case is the student who knows and is determined to go to one particular school. In this case, we can assume the student wanted to go to East Carolina University. The first place this student looks is to see where other graduates have been successful in graduating and receiving jobs after college. By looking at the chart, the student notices that business and humanities and social sciences have the highest employment after college. Comparing the 2 department salaries, the student decides to pursue a degree in business at ECU. Similar to the previous case, this chart shows the student the cost of living in North Carolina to calculate the amount of disposable income this student will generate in the coming years. This chart shows that this student can expect a disposable income 2 years after graduating and be debt-free within 11 years.
The final case is a student who only knows that they want a degree that is affordable and will not put them into debt for years to come. First, the student compares the tuitions and the loan amounts for each school to find that Western Carolina has one of the lowest tuition costs of the UNC schools and a reasonable loan amount. Therefore, they decide on Western Carolina as their school of choice. Once the school has been chosen, they look to see how well the students from the school do in each department. They notice that the applied science graduates have done very well for themselves and decide that applied science will be their department of choice. Much like the other two cases, we can see the student's debt and disposable income from the graph here. After only 2 years, this student would have a disposable income beginning to appear and be in debt-free before their 31st birthday. Our second goal for this project was to determine the best choice of university for each major based on mean salary after graduation. Here we can see which department's graduates do the best from each school based on their mean salary after 1 year. As mentioned, for our second goal we wanted to see the best department by mean salary. However, the goal is to get hired after college, so we added a percent of graduates who actually get employed. This graph here shows the school with the best employment rate for each department. This graph here shows the highest mean salary after 1 year for each department. In summary, we have looked at 3 cases which we were able to predict possible salaries, loan repayment, and disposable income. We have also found the top schools for each department according to 2017 data, along with the top employment opportunities from each department. What we have presented does not cover every possible scenario, but is a tool to show students some of the concepts they may want to consider while looking ahead to college.
This project has the ability to help students make the best choices when choosing a life path. I believe college is an exceptional option for students graduating high school, and with guidance from this project, we can help students make the best choices to determine how life after college would look.
A college education is getting more and more expensive with less financial gain than in the past. I feel that our project represents a powerful tool in being able to aid students, at least in North Carolina, in determining the best financial decision they can about college. College should not be taken lightly, but with a little research and determination, it can be possible for anybody. Thank you for your time.